Chapter 11, The Fight. I feel quite confident about winning, Master Li. Will you really teach me the art of throwing knife after the match? Shi Mu asked, giving a quick nod. I have managed to achieve the art of throwing knife after 20 years of meditation. I doubt that it will be defeated by any of the rare skills practiced by large families. I had planned on keeping it a secret, but I will gift it to you if you garner enough fame for our Feng Lu Club in this competition, Li Qinghai chuckled. Then I shall do my best, Shi Mu answered with a smile. Honestly, your progress in body tempering is amazing. It is a wonder that you can already practice with iron sand. You must not, however, take this competition lightly. Although all the participants are below 18, the students of the other clubs will not be much weaker than you. I know of a couple of contestants who have reached level 10 in body tempering. But, if you could manage to reach level 11, then it is sure to be an easy win, Li Qinghai said in a serious tone. I shall practice unceasingly, Shi Mu answered without thinking. You need not to say to me. I will also make you enter the level successfully, and too in a short period of time. Li Qinghai's eyes were glittering with hope as he led Shi Mu to a spacious room behind the yard. Once they had entered it, he directly bolted the door. Shi Mu took off his shirt and a belt of heavy sand thudded down onto the ground, making the floor tremble. Shi Mu never took the belt off, except for when he had to bathe or sleep. He had even been wearing it when he had confronted the zombie in the old temple. He would have been much quicker if he had the time to undo the heavy sand belt when the zombie had appeared. The belt is not heavy enough for you. Increase the weight by 10 kilograms from tomorrow onwards, said Li Qinghai. He then took out a stout stick from a nearby shelf, which was padded with a thick layer of animal skin at each end. Shi Mu nodded obediently, stomping hard on the ground. He lowered his body firmly and took a deep breath. He then clenched his fists, holding his breath. Li Qinghai raised his steady arms before he began heavily striking at every acupuncture point on Shi Mu's body. After a long period of time, Shi Mu emerged from the room with his clothes on. His normally nimble feet looked slightly unsteady, and his face was somewhat contorted in pain. Meanwhile Li Qinghai, who was sweating profusely in the room, smiled bitterly to himself. This little boy must have a body like a demon's. How else could he exhaust an intermediate warrior like me? But that's good. It is because of this demon-like body that he has been able to finish the iron sand practice in half a year. I'm looking forward to the competition this year. Even if one disregards the iron sand practice, his jump of 2 levels within half a year is still outstanding. Incredible. Could he actually be a blood warrior? Li Qinghai said, sinking into a meditation. Li Qinghai wasn't aware that Shi Mu had not been taking regular breaks between each iron sand practice. One would normally rest for a few days after practicing the iron sand method. Instead, Shi Mu was relying on his amazing healing power. He therefore continued practicing during the intervals by hunting wild animals in the mountain, wearing the heavy black armor. This was the reason he was able to achieve so much in body tempering. After leaving the club, Shi Mu crossed a street before reaching a rather beautiful manor. This remote manor was one of his temporary residences, comprising of 3 rooms in the city. A little while after his entry, a certain room of the manor was filled with a strong smell. The smell of medical herbs along with steam began wafting out of the window. Ah, Shi Mu sighed as he relaxed. He was lying in a big wooden basin, immersed in boiling water and covered with some herbs. His upper body was outside the water, covered with swollen marks. His face, however, was relaxed. He soon fell asleep in his bath. When he opened his eyes again, the water had already cooled down, and the sky had turned dark outside the window. Shi Mu rose from the basin and studied his body carefully. The swollen marks were nearly invisible now. The special medicine made by Feng Lu Club was truly remarkable. The medicine, along with his own abnormal healing, was the reason why he had been able to undergo the brutal training for half a year. After all, not every warrior could safely endure heavy poundings every few days, let alone arduous running every evening clad in heavy armor, and a weighted belt. In this half-year, he had grown much taller. Apart from a little bit of childishness, both his stature and his style of speech resembled that of an adult's. After he had dried himself with a towel, Shi Mu put on his shirt and sand belt. He then left the room. 1 hour later, Shi Mu was at a certain street in the north district of the city. He looked around to make sure no one was watching, then turned and walked into a plain-looking house. He found an ordinary-looking room inside, where 2 men were waiting at a square table. These 2 were none other than Feng Li and Gao Yuan. "Brother Shi, you've come," greeted Feng Li with a smile, rising from his chair as soon as he saw Shi Mu. Gao Yuan also happily rose to greet him. "I was sure Brother Feng had some business for me after the gesture at the club," Shi Mu said with a smile. "Brother Shi's right. This time, we need your presence. The opponents are from the Luan Shui gang near Huangtian. We, belonging to the Black Fox sect, have asked them to come and compete with us here tonight. The result of this competition will decide who can reign over the 5 streets near North King Temple. I heard that they have obtained the help of some experts. So please be careful, Brother Shi," Feng Li explained the situation. "Experts? Do you mean martial disciples?" said Shi Mu, his eyes flashing with surprise. "Don't worry, small sects like Black Fox and Luan Shui cannot afford a peak-level martial disciple. The experts I mentioned can't be better than some of the mid-level ones from the clubs. The Luan Shui sect has been desperate ever since Brother Shi helped us last time. Our Black Fox sect has grown much stronger ever since Brother Shi started helping us," said Gao Yuan, curling his lips into a smile. "That's true. Though it's not a set rule, small sects like ours have trouble attracting the attention of a peak-level martial disciples. So even if the Luan Shui guys knew one at the peak of the level, they can't possibly afford the cost, for it would leave them penniless," Feng Li smiled with assurance. "I can help as long as there are no peak-level martial disciples involved. As usual, it will cost 300 silver notes, and nobody should know I'm participating," Shi Mu said. He had been reassured by the boys. And so he completed the deal with confidence. "Good, then it's settled. We've prepared the thing you requested, and we can set out in a moment," Feng Li said. He took out a small package from his shirt and passed it to Shi Mu. Shi Mu walked into a back room, which had a small table. He set the package down on the table and opened it. Inside, he found a pair of black gloves, a black robe, and a silver mask. He donned them in a quick and efficient manner. When he came out of the room, Feng Li and Gao Yuan fell silent for a moment. "Each time I see Brother Shi in this suit, I almost get the feeling that second brother is still with us," said Gao Yuan. His expression had turned nondescript on seeing Shi Mu in the suit. "Oh, we are so fortunate to have Brother Shi helping us. Ever since second brother's death in that accident, Brother Shi has taken his place in protecting us. Without him playing the role of fierce fists, we Black Foxes wouldn't have been powerful enough to keep our territories. Except for the 2 of us, nobody knows that the top expert in our sect has changed," Feng Li echoed with a sad sigh. "I'm only doing this to make money for my medicine baths. Besides, your Black Fox sect protects those who cannot fight back against crueler sects. If I stand by and let you guys get beaten, ordinary people would suffer as well," said a dull voice from the mask, completely different from Shi Mu's original tone. "Of course, it benefits both of us. There's not much time left, let's hurry," Feng Li smiled in agreement, politely indicating the need to hurry. Shi Mu wasn't against this either. The 3 of them soon left the room, disappearing at the end of the street and melting into the dim night. In a dilapidated and remote street, 2 groups of men were furiously fighting each other. They were wearing the distinct colors of their respective sections. One sect was wearing black and consisted of approximately 40 men. Feng, Gao, and Shi stood behind this group with folded arms, watching them fight. The other sect apparently outnumbered the first, and all of its members were wearing blue. This was the notorious Luan Shui section. 5 men stood behind them, carefully watching the fight. Before long, the outnumbered Black Fox sect started to crumble. Many of its members were sporting serious wounds, which forced them to retire from the fight. "Brother Shi, we must display your skills now," said Feng Li. His heart had grown heavy at the sight, and he turned to Shi Mu for help. Shi Mu nodded without objection and charged into the crowd without delay. Pang! Pang! 2 dull sounds were heard as 2 of the blue-robed men fell to the ground. "Run away, it's Fierce Fists!" yelled many of the blue-robed Luan Shui members. They started running in the opposite direction at the sight of Shi Mu dressed as Fierce Fists. Meanwhile, 2 burly fellows dressed in blue rushed forward towards Shi Mu's back. They raised their armed staffs to strike his back. Shi Mu turned around and punched the advancing weapons, breaking them. Shi Mu moved into attack, leaving no time for his opponents to react. One single punch launched one of the men 6 meters back, where he dropped to the ground like a brick. Shi Mu then turned to the other man, kicking him with enough force to stir up some wind. Chapter 12, Bravery. Shi Mu managed to take down 7 or 8 of his opponents in the blink of an eye, like a wolf among a herd of sheep. The Luan Shui sect began to flee down both sides of the road in fear. Grabbing the opportunity, Feng Li and Gao Yuan charged into the chaos and began to strike at 5 or 6 of their enemies with a pair of iron rods. The men who were watching from behind saw this and, in order to reinforce their little army, were forced to abandon their watch-and-wait policy. 3 Luan Shui thugs led by a middle-aged man rushed towards Shi Mu, who was masquerading as Fierce Fists. The middle-aged man called out loudly to Shi Mu. Meanwhile, 2 other men stood up to act as obstacles in the paths of Gao Yuan and Feng Li. A series of non-stop whacks were heard from the 4 iron rods in Feng Li and Gao Yuan's hands. The iron rods moved in similar motions, for they both were using the same martial art technique. Though their opponents both wielded flat white weapons that looked like iron rulers, they were employing different skills. One moved his ruler in a firm and heavy manner, while the other seemed to move his weapon more randomly with quick and fluid movements. It was hard to tell which side had an advantage over the other. Meanwhile, Shi Mu was fighting 3 blue-robed men. They were far stronger than the others, but he was handling them with great composure. Wasting no words on his opponents, he lifted a wooden stick off the ground with his foot, quickly catching it with his hands. Swish! Swish! The middle-aged man in the lead was carrying sharp-looking bamboo knives in his hands. As he approached Shi Mu, he wielded the knives in a cross and directly pushed them into Shi Mu's chest viciously. Even though the bamboo knives were not made out of iron, their sharpness was capable of doing some serious damage if they caught their target. A cold light flashed across Shi Mu's eyes as he saw the knives. However, he only shook his wrist once, and 6 shadows emerged from the stick, which began dancing wildly in front of his enemies. Ah! The middle-aged man let out a loud cry, unable to hide his astonishment. He had to pull his bamboo knives back at lightning speed in order to avoid the wild dance of the shadows. Whack! Whack! 2 clear sounds were heard as the man felt his hands shake violently. The pair of bamboo knives was splintered into pieces, accompanied by a strong pain that crept into his chest. Forced to take a step back, he nearly lost his footing in the process, and had to make an effort to prevent himself from falling to the ground. At the sight, the other 2 men immediately thrust their spears into the air in front of Shi Mu. Another opponent shook his wrist, unleashing a slithering whip that looked like a ferocious python. In the face of the attacks, Shi Mu let out a low shout and then waved his arms abruptly. He threw the wooden stick like a javelin, and a boom sound was heard as the stick slammed into something. The spearman had no time to resist the head-on collision of the tip of his wooden spear with Shi Mu's stick. A wave of energy was sent up the spear towards the man, and the weapon was shattered into pieces. The man fell unconscious from the pain, with both of his hands bleeding. At exactly the same time, Shi Mu stretched out his other arm. He instantly grasped the approaching whip with a gloved hand. All this was done so quickly that all his movements were nothing but a blur to the others watching the fight. The man with the whip turned pale at the sight. Overcome with panic, he lashed wildly with the whip as he tried to take a step back. Shi Mu snorted at his attempt and pulled the tip of the whip gently. The pull made the man tremble uncontrollably, and he staggered forward like a drunk. "No!" he cried. However, it was too late for him to flee. Shi Mu was already at his side, having covered the whole distance in the blink of an eye. The next moment, Shi Mu struck him hard in the stomach. Before he could even realize it, the wind had been knocked out of him by an overwhelming force. He was left kneeling on the ground, almost unconscious. Shi Mu did not let him go. In yet another quick movement, his body flew into the air like a dragon. He lunged forward with a kick, his leg sweeping his enemy, who cringed as the leg charged towards him. He was well aware that the impact of the kick might kill him, given the strength of his opponent. However, he had already been made defenseless after the previous attack. "Stop! We admit our defeat." At this time, a terrified voice pleaded with Shi Mu. Shi Mu heard the request and held his attack, letting his kick pass right above the man's head. A strong wind passed just above the man, leaving him paralyzed with fear. Shi Mu looked at the pleading man after landing on the ground. Through the holes of his mask, he saw that the voice belonged to the middle-aged man, the leader of the Luan Shui gang. The middle-aged man sighed with relief as he confirmed the spearman's safety. He then made a placating gesture with clasped hands, as he smiled bitterly at Shi Mu. "You really are the Fierce Fists. You must be one of the top martial disciples in Feng City, so why don't you leave our gangs alone? We are only fighting for some bread, not for anything serious," said the middle-aged man. Shi Mu stood there without moving an inch, his eyes cold and his lips firm. It was then that Feng Li walked up and said, "Stop this nonsense. You must withdraw from the 5 streets immediately after today's competition." Okay, we'll withdraw from here as we cannot match up to the Fierce Fists." "Let's go," the leader replied in a resolute manner and led his men off, having made a decision. In less than a minute, no Luan Shui men could be seen around the nearby streets, which now belonged completely to the Black Foxes. The previously injured men in black were now jumping around in buoyant spirits. Feng Li and Gao Yuan were also in high spirits and were quick to start working on the management of their newly obtained territories. The Fierce Fists, who was played by Shi Mu, took this opportunity to disappear from everyone's sight, keeping his enigmatic reputation intact. Several days later, Shi Mu returned to his suburban manor with his new black armor, which was 5 kilograms heavier than the previous one. He was astonished to find the beautiful girl waiting in the middle of the square. "Young Master Shi, Miss Zhong arrived here 2 days ago. Since I had no way of contacting young Master Shi, I had to ask her to stay here for a few nights," said Zhang Suo, the manager of the manor. He had answered the unspoken question in a rather terrified voice. The manager was fully aware of Shi Mu's tricks, despite his young age. However, this time he had put up the girl without asking for his master's permission beforehand. He was worried that he had made a terrible mistake. "It's all right, you can go now. I'll talk to Miss Zhong myself," said Shi Mu, waving Zhong Suo away. He had properly prepared himself by then. Meanwhile, the girl stood there silently the entire time, with her head lowered. Shi Mu made a gesture as Zhang Suo left, inviting the girl into his bedroom. "Miss Zhong, why have you come here now? Is there something you wish to tell me?" Shi Mu turned to ask the girl in a rather serious manner. "Young Master Shi, please do not question me anymore. Are you in need of extra help here? If you are not averse to the idea, would you agree to let me work here as a servant?" Zhong Xiu said as she built the courage to look up at Shi Mu, biting her lips nervously. "A servant girl? Miss Zhong, don't talk nonsense. What happened to you at the Wu family? I recall that they were quite polite to you at that time. I would be very grateful if you told me what happened," Shi Mu asked slowly, knitting his brows together. An ugly girl like me? What do you think happened to me at the Woos? They only let me in because they thought I had some special abilities. They refused to accept me once they became aware of my condition. I'm penniless now, so I had no option but to leave them as soon as possible. Should I have waited to be asked to leave? Believe me, I had no other place to go to in Feng City except here. Or I wouldn't have had the audacity to return. Zhongxiu's eyes shimmered with tears, her voice somewhat choking with sobs. Could there be another young girl such as her? One who could keep her cool in the face of her father's death, and her fiancé's rejection? I see. It seems that your father was right. Well, don't mention the servant deal again. You are welcome to stay here as you are. Although I wasn't born with a lot of money, I can at least provide you with food, and a place to sleep. Also, don't call me young master anymore, brother Shi is fine. If you wish to leave someday, just write me a note before you do, he said. A last grain of stubbornness had still remained on the girl's face, which reminded him of someone he used to hold dear. Moved by the sight, he decided to sweep the stubbornness away by persuading her with his answer. Thank you so much, brother Shi, said the girl, overwhelmed with surprise and joy. To show her gratitude, she made a gesture at the boy by gently pulling on her dress. Shi Mu then called Zhang Suo again to arrange a separate, clean room for Zhongxiu. Meanwhile, at the Wu Manor in Feng City, some men were plotting something against Zhongxiu. The pale old man who had met Shi Mu at the gate was amongst them. Second brother, are you sure that Zhongming didn't tell the secret to his daughter? If anything goes wrong, we will suffer a huge loss this time, said an old man who seemed to be in his 50s. His features were similar to those of the pale old man, but he had a more imposing manner. He was the current master of the house, the leader of the family, as well as the oldest of the three Wu brothers. Furthermore, he was also the only Houtian warrior in his family. Eldest brother, if you don't believe me, you should believe that tool. It didn't respond to the girl at all, which proves that she has not yet awakened her blood. That being the case, there is no reason for a penniless girl to be married into our Wu family. Although it is the Zhongs who sent us the tool, they would have died 100 times if we hadn't helped them repeatedly. So how does it matter if we cancel the engagement? The pale man, Wu Feng, answered disapprovingly. Exactly, eldest uncle. I shall never marry that ugly girl. I'm taking a fancy to Jin Yuzhen, one of the Jins. The youth who was listening at their side interrupted grudgingly. Stop it, Hua-er. You are in no position here to interrupt your elders, the pale man reprimanded his son with great severity. This shut the rude youth's mouth, but he seemed to dislike it. Hua-er, your likes and dislikes cannot influence this decision. There is a possibility that the girl could bring us blood warrior grandchildren, even though her blood has not yet been awakened. Though there's only a slim chance, I still consider it improper to let her go, second young brother, Wu Liang continued in an easy manner. If Hua-er has a problem with the girl's looks, our Wu Sun wouldn't mind taking her. So there's no need to drive her away, the third brother Wu Tong, who looked much younger than his other brothers, answered with a smile. Chapter 13, The Art of the Blazing Spear and the Knives of Sun and Moon. But Wu Sun was born slow and lame. Though Zhongxiu is ugly, she is actually rather proud. She will be unwilling to marry him, the pale man said, shaking his head. Unwilling? Do you think she can have her way in our house? I'll make her aware of the consequences once she is in our hands, Wu Tong sneered as he suggested. You don't think I've thought of applying force? It's just that the girl was not alone when she had arrived. A boy was with her when she came here, and I had him investigated. I found out that he has some relation with the Jin family, the pale man sighed. What? He's a member of the Jin family? Then we have no choice but to let him and the girl go this time. If this matter comes out in the open and the Jin family gets involved, we may even lose the artifact to them. As for the ancestry of the Zhongs, they may have fabricated the fact that they had a blood warrior as an ancestor to enhance our image of them. Besides, even if they did once have a blood warrior in their family, there is no guarantee of another's birth. We could just follow the secret method of using lots of herbs to test the presence of a blood in the girl. However, that could result in wastage of materials, and the artifact is of more value to us, the leader said, his attitude changing, visibly surprised by Shimu's identity. Of course, the pale old man had no objections with the final decision. The others then dealt with some other issues before leaving the hall. Father, who was that boy who escorted that ugly girl here? How is he related to the Jin family? The haughty boy could not resist asking his father after they had come to a different room. Oh, you mean that boy Shimu? Actually, he wasn't directly born into the Jin family, and is only a remote relative. His stepmother brought him into the family. You must make it a point to dodge her in every way possible, the man said. His stepmother, the arrogant boy asked, baffled. Yes, her name is Jin Zhen, and she is Jin Yu Zhen's aunt. She is at the highest level in her family. In fact, she is as powerful as your eldest uncle. She usually keeps away from people's attention, but she is the one who controls all the medicine business of the Jin family. She has enormous power in the family. Why do you care so much about Shimu? The man asked. I heard that the ugly girl went to Shimu after leaving our manor. I don't have any interest in her at all, but it is a fact that we were engaged. Her being with another man brings a lot of shame upon me. Father, I want to teach that fellow a good lesson, the arrogant boy said, snorting with resentment. Well, my darling son, it seems you've forgotten what I taught you earlier. You've been able to meet many Jin boys in your pursuit of Jin Yu Zhen, right? It may be inconvenient for our Wu family to deal with Shimu, but it's a different story if the Jins decide to take care of their own affairs. That way, it will have nothing to do with our family, the pale old man said affectionately, offering his advice upon understanding his son's intentions. Thanks, father, I know what I should do next, the boy said. His father's instructions had left him in high spirits. You two lazy punks! A small sect was able to beat you in a flash, a boy in white said coldly, mocking the two young men. He was standing on a fairly large practice ground. His eyes were fixed on the two men, who were slightly older than him. The two young men were the same men who Shimu had beaten easily in the fight between the Black Fox and the Luan Shui gangs. One of the men stood with a spear in his hand and the other with a whip around his waist, and both were now wearing blue shirts. The two experts were in shock, and were facing the boy while sweating profusely. Brother Wang, how did you come to know about the fight? The spearman stammered. Humph, had you planned to hide it from me? Had I not heard of your feats from the others in the club's reputation would have continued to rot in secret, the boy in white snorted as he questioned with a solemn face. Though we were defeated this time, we will take our revenge. Our plan is to polish our skills under the instructor's guidance. Then we will challenge Fierce Fists again, in order to save our club's reputation, the man with the whip answered using his quick wits. He then wiped the sweat from his forehead. So, you were really beaten that quickly? I want to know the details, the boy in white asked, obviously interested in the mysterious opponent. Yes, Brother Wang, this is how it went. We weren't the first ones to fight the Fierce Fists. It was the leader of Luan Shui who, the two young men hurriedly retold their account of the events of that night. So I escaped narrowly when leader Yu gave up and pleaded with him. I wouldn't have been standing here if he had kicked me. So can this Fierce Fists that you are talking about really crack your spear with a stick and pull Brother Li to his side with ease? He must have crossed level 10 in body tempering. If that isn't the case, then he must have been born with great strength. No wonder you two could not match him at all, the boy in white said as he eased up on the two men, persuaded by the narration. That's definitely true, younger brother. Nobody knows what he looks like in reality. He reached the top position as soon as he began fighting for the Black Fox. Although he had achieved a lot earlier as well, his skills seem to have gotten better in the past half year. He has even defeated the renowned Feng Jun of the Tianlu Club. He broke 7 of his ribs with his bare fists, leaving him bedridden. Brother Li echoed the man's words in a hurry. You mean Fierce Fists succeeded in defeating even Feng Jun? He was almost enrolled into the Kai Yuan martial arts school last year. I am certain that he must have reached the 10th level in body tempering by now, and he has practiced the iron-skinned demon art. You mean to say that despite all of this, he was beaten badly enough for him to end up being bedridden? Now I'm even more interested in this mysterious boy. The boy in white was no longer angry. On the contrary, he unexpectedly gave a hearty smile. So Brother Wang, you mean to? The 2 young men were left rather stunned at his sudden change of attitude. I don't care how you do it, but I want a face-to-face meeting with this boy. I want to have a good fight with him, to see if he can take my blazing spear, the boy in white answered without hesitation. But, the spearman said in doubt. Sure, we will definitely get you a face-to-face meeting with him, Brother Li promised readily. The boy in white left after Brother Li had answered to his satisfaction. Are we really going to call Fierce Fists out? The spearman anxiously asked his companion. Don't you know Brother Wang well? He would have definitely beaten us had we not promised him what he wanted. Take it easy, all we have to do is deliver a message to one of the Luan Shui boys. It is not our business if Fierce Fists shows up or not. Ha! I was acting like a fool. If Fierce Fists refuses, Brother Wang will definitely go to him personally. Then our defeat will be avenged, the spearman said, suddenly understanding Brother Li's intentions. That's right. Although it belongs to an accomplished level, the art of the blazing spear is one of the few arts that can be mastered by a martial disciple. Even Fierce Fists will stand no chance in front of that skill. The 2 men had their hopes up high at the thought of the idea, and left the club in elated spirits. Meanwhile, the current Fierce Fists was quite unaware of the approaching trouble. However, Shi Mu wouldn't have cared much even if the news had reached him. After all, such events had happened more than once in the half-year that he had been playing the role of Fierce Fists. One such event had taken place when Feng Jun of Tianlu Club had challenged him, after being instigated by a gang. Shi Mu had smashed Feng Jun's armor in 3 strikes, using his stone-breaking fist. The challenger had been left bedridden for nearly a month. His reason for taking up the role of Fierce Fists was rather simple. As soon as he joined the Feng Lu Club, Feng Li and Gao Yuan witnessed his accomplished stone-breaking fist, which left them exceedingly amazed. The 2 took the opportunity to approach him and eventually succeeded in persuading Shi Mu to take the place of the recently deceased Fierce Fists. The previous Fierce Fists had been the #1 martial disciple in Black Fox Gang and had just died of an illness. Shi Mu, hence, regularly began earning a huge amount of money by protecting the Black Fox Gang against the threats of other gangs. This money helped him in affording the herbs for his frequent medicine baths. At this moment, Shi Mu found himself in the city again. He was making his way to a worn-down street within Luan Shui's territory. The street was 100 meters long, and barely any business was taking place on either side of the bare street. Shi Mu visited the street despite this, and entered a blacksmith's shop. He looked expectantly at a bronze-skinned burly man. The man's upper body was unclothed, and he was looking at an illustrated paper with his eyes wide open. He twisted his face after some time. What? Even Master Ma could not manage to make this pair of weapons. Shi Mu asked anxiously as he studied the man's knit eyebrows. The design is so delicate that it requires a lot of energy to make. But with more time and a step-by-step process, I believe I will be able to make it. The whole problem lies in the required material, which is cold iron. It is extremely rare, and I only have a small piece of it. Can I use other materials instead? The burly man had to look up from his paper on hearing Shi Mu's question, answering the boy after thinking for a while. Certainly not. This pair of sun and moon knives will be very useful to me. It is not that I'm expecting this weapon to cut through everything, but I expect that it won't be destroyed by ordinary weapons. All right, I will give you another 500 silver notes to obtain more cold iron from other blacksmiths. I want the pair made accurately and without any flaws. You have 1 full month to make the weapons, Shi Mu answered decisively. Chapter 14, Wang Tianhao. Don't worry, your money is safe here. You can come back for the weapons in a month, the burly man promised confidently without thinking. Then I'll rely on you, Master Ma, responded Shi Mu, a smile playing on his lips. He removed a bulging bag of silver from his waist, and threw it in front of the blacksmith without hesitation. Master Ma was no ordinary blacksmith, and he was the only person other than Feng Li and Gao Yuan who knew the true identity of Fierce Fists. Rumor had it that he was a distant relative of Gao Yuan, and was skilled at ironworking. He was rumored to be more skilled at making weapons than most other blacksmiths in Feng City. He had made the silver mask that was worn by Fierce Fists with his own professional hands. Because he believed in the blacksmith's talents, Shi Mu made the payment in advance without any misgivings. However, after paying such an exorbitant fee, he found that he had run out of money. Shi Mu's income included a small portion of money which he earned from his well-situated restaurant, Yuan Xiang. Its business had surged after he began to bring animals that he hunted on the nearby mountain. This ensured him an income of at least 100 silver notes each month. The other half of his income was gained by playing the role of Fierce Fists. As for the fields under his control, Shi Mu did not expect much revenue from them. This was because the managing of the manor amounted to almost all the rent collected. It seemed that now he had no option but to resort to the thing that he had been planning for some time. Because he had recently enhanced Gale Force knife art, he could now achieve 7 cuts with one movement. Though it would prove difficult, he could now manage to shift the plan to an earlier date. To accomplish 7 cuts in one movement was almost impossible for average martial disciples, and he recently had learnt the fact that it was next to impossible for any martial disciple to even manage 6 cuts in a movement. The blood mutation had not happened to his body in the past half-year, the proof of which lay in his limited progress of achieving just 1 more cut in a movement. Even though he had spent a few months on it, he had not been able to make any more progress. However, his progress was still far from ordinary, as it was enough to dwarf the average martial disciples. After all, even the instructor Li Qinghai could only manage 9 cuts with the aid of his real qi. After some time, Shi Mu left the blacksmith's place as he continued to think about his plan. He spent half a day making purchases at some other shops in the city before finally returning to his temporary residence. The moment he walked into the room, his expression changed. He briefly glanced out of the window in a relaxed manner, and then walked to the half-open window. As he fumbled with it, he found an object which turned out to be a paper ball. Shi Mu was quite calm as he unfolded the paper dexterously. Then he began laughing delightedly. It seems like someone's begging me to take their money, he thought out loud. Then, he stuffed the paper ball into his shirt, climbed into his bed and fell fast asleep. He slept soundly and woke up refreshed at dusk. He took out a big parcel from under the bed and left his residence again. 1 hour later, many of the Black Fox members were lying all over the ground in the backyard of the fairly well-known Tianwang Temple in Feng City. They had nearly covered the entire yard. There was not even one of them who was not moaning and groaning in agony, not daring to pick up a single stick or knife from the great many weapons scattered around them. Even Feng Li and Gao Yuan had been taken down and were unable to move. One of them had a bleeding mouth, and another was rolling in the dust. Both of them were gasping with astonishment at the boy, who stood before them, with a spear in his hands. Though both the leaders of the Black Fox gang had heard the opponent's name and were aware of his talents, they had still not expected his actual strength to be this great. Although both leaders were quite accomplished in their body tempering, he had handled them both along with 10 odd guards outside the yard, within the quarter of an hour. Wang Tianhao, we barely had the chance to read your challenge note before you came here to fight. That's not fair. Gao Yuan could not resist protesting, even though his body was paining all over. Humph! It seems that you complain a lot. Well, you're good enough at shouting. I'm sorry, I was in a bad mood this afternoon. So I decided that it would be better if I met your fierce fists as soon as possible. Do you have a problem with that? The boy in white, despite his graceful looks, answered in a cold and rude manner. He instantly lifted his foot to bash Gao Yuan's head halfway into the ground. Gao Yuan fearfully struggled to escape from under his foot, but his strength had abandoned him. He could only swear loudly. The swear word made the boy stomp again heavily without hesitation, torturing Gao Yuan into a quiet anguish. Feng Li was greatly angered by this, though still terrified. He tried very hard to get up and put up a desperate fight. However, before he could stand up, a black shadow whizzed toward the white-clothed boy at lightning speed. The boy raised his eyebrows and lazily thrust forward with his spear, a weapon made out of refined iron. Bang! The black shadow exploded at the spear's handle with a thunderous boom, sending many splinters shooting out in all directions. The black shadow which had destroyed the refined iron was a small, bowl-sized stone. The force of the blow made the boy step back, with his arms trembling. He then tilted his head to the side and narrowly avoided getting directly hit by another stone. The stone left a scratch mark on his cheek, and blood began trickling down. "It's you, the fierce fists," the boy in white said, showing no concern for his wound. On the contrary, his eyes shifted to the newcomer, a black-clothed man in a silver mask. His blood was racing with excitement. "So you are the one who sent me the challenge note?" Shi Mu asked in a slow voice, after taking a look at the yard through the holes in his mask. "Don't you know who I am?" the white-robed boy asked, somewhat surprised at Shi Mu's lack of awareness. "Why should I know you?" As he glanced at the challenger's spear, Shi Mu made his way to the middle of the yard. He used his foot to kick an iron knife and then caught it with his hand. "Careful, second brother. This man is Wang Tianhao. He is said to be the top martial disciple in the Feng city. He is a son of the Wangs, who are known to raise blood warriors." Feng Li shouted his warning before anything could happen. Top martial disciple in Feng city. A Wang family blood warrior. Shi Mu's eyes lit up with surprise at the titles. "Haha! I did not claim the title of the top martial disciple. It just so happens that I beat everyone who objected to the title. As far as the other title is concerned, it is true that I am one of the Wangs. However, I have not awakened my blood yet to become a blood warrior," the boy in white smiled with pride. Shi Mu's face grew somewhat solemn at the answer. He couldn't help but ask, "Excuse me, but then why do you trifle with such a small gang?" "Haha! I wanted to challenge the strong member, of course. Why else would I do this? Since you have arrived, I'll let these trash warriors go so I can save my energy. Let's see if you can take my first attack." Wang Tianhao challenged with a loud laugh. He then leapt up into the air, and shook his hands while grasping the spear. He attempted a sudden stab as he rushed towards Shi Mu. Shi Mu's sight blurred for a moment before he saw that 5 glaring spear tips were charging directly at him. Shi Mu snorted at the fierce attack. With a simple shake of his arms, his iron knife transformed into 5 black shadows that struck forward, and several puff sounds came out. The 5 spear tips collided with the knife shadows, only to get smashed, and then disappear. However, this was not the end. A 6th spear tip appeared out of nowhere with a glitter of cold light, and slithered towards Shi Mu's forehead like a snake. This attack, whether due to its speed or angle, was entirely unexpected and caught Shi Mu off guard. He had no chance to defend himself with his iron knife, which he then had to throw away. He took a step back with a loud shout, and his arms surged forward with blurring speed. A dull sound followed, leaving Wang Tianhao shocked. Shi Mu's hands, which were clothed in black gloves, had gripped the tip of the spear tightly like 2 giant iron anvils. He had caught the spear half an inch away from his chest. Wang Tianhao sneered at the sight. As far as he was concerned, Fierce Fists was an idiot if he believed that a single pair of hands could catch his spear. Before Shi Mu could make a move, he twisted the spear tightly, and pulled it back towards himself. A loud buzz was heard as the boy found his refined iron spear handle shaking violently. However, the tip remained pressed between Shi Mu's hands without moving an inch. A burning pang crept up from the handle, stinging Wang Tianhao's palm. He took a cold breath, well aware of the fact that his own strength was stinging his skin. At the other end of the spear, Shi Mu extended his fingers to tighten his hold on the tip with one hand. His other hand was clenched into a fist, and was striking at the handle heavily and rapidly. A clear sound was heard as the iron spear began to bend, its length of more than 3 meters being cut from the middle. Another strong force rushed up the handle towards Wang Tianhao, welling up from his wrists and gushing onto his arms. Oh no, this guy is unnaturally strong. Though he was aware of the Fierce Fist's great strength, it had never occurred to him that he could break iron with brute force. He swore loudly, and then stomped heavily on the ground with one foot. He then shot backward, releasing the spear handle from his hand. Boom! The handle smashed hard onto the ground due to the brute force, creating a mud pit the size of a basin. The boy in white steadied himself again on his feet. However, his face grew extremely embarrassed at the sight. Pang! Shi Mu threw the already bent iron handle onto the ground, which now appeared like a huge bow. He then strode over to his opponent. I give up. Your strength is unfathomable, and I no longer have my weapon. Now I understand what my seniors meant about your tenfold strength. It is certain that I cannot defeat a muscular guy like you even with the full power of my blazing spear. But, in 2 to 3 months, it will be a different story altogether. Wang Tianhao laughed unexpectedly, brushing aside Shi Mu's challenge. You started the fight, and now you want to stop it. Do you think you can always have the final say? Shi Mu refused in a cold and low voice. He shook his shoulders, ready to teach him a lesson using his brutal fists. I'll compensate you with money for wasting your time. The answer obviously stunned Shi Mu, as it was amusing and unexpected. Shi Mu could not believe his ears. I'll pay you. Here's a small bag of golden beans, and it should be more than enough to cover all of their medical expenses. But let's make one thing clear. I'm not afraid of you, Fierce Fists. I just know that I don't have the strength to beat you at the moment, and so it's not worthwhile to fight you with all my strength. The top warrior in Feng City should not be seen covered in sweat. The boy in white leaned backward, and lifted his hand to throw out a palm-sized cotton bag. It was Shi Mu's first encounter with such a narcissist, so he could only stare in mute amazement. Just then, the boy in white turned around and ran away at full speed, stomping in the middle to create a great force. This force enabled him to fly directly over the half-a-meter-high wall. His faint voice floated from the other side of the wall, ha ha! Fierce Fists, remember that I am Wang Tianhao, the one who is destined to defeat you in the future. Then there was silence. Chapter 15, Jin Yu Zhen. Feng Li managed to help Gao Yuan up from the ground. By then, Shi Mu had picked up the cotton bag and unclasped it to look inside. Seeing the contents, Shi Mu's face displayed an obvious expression of satisfaction. Second brother, it's only because you arrived in time to help us that all my brothers didn't suffer further at Wang Tianhao's hands. Feng Li smiled bitterly at Shi Mu, his face contorted in pain. That's right, we were lucky that second leader arrived in time. Wang Tianhao, that proud bastard. 2 strikes by our second leader were enough to leave him begging for mercy. Yeah, the title of Feng City's top martial disciple should belong to our second leader. Now back on their feet, all the other Black Fox members forgot about their aching bodies in their anxiousness to offer their flattery. An atmosphere of celebration surrounded each one of them, suggesting that their spirits had been doubly lifted. After all, they had witnessed the defeat of the so-called top martial disciple in Feng City at the hands of their mysterious second leader. This obviously meant that as long as no accomplished warriors were involved, the Black Fox gang could rule over all the small gangs. Well, I've got other things to do. So let's call it a day then, Shi Mu said, unmoved by the rapturous crowd. He took his leave with a wave, without forgetting to stuff the bag into his shirt. Hold on, second brother. Third brother and I still wish to have a word with you, Feng Li called out to him hurriedly, upset by his sudden departure. You have more to talk about? Well, then I'll stay a little longer, Shi Mu promised readily, as he tilted his head and gave it some thought. Feng Li was quite happy to hear this. He turned to his subordinates and said, "Go and deal with your wounds now." The Black Fox members were smart enough to realize that their three leaders were about to have an important discussion, so they began retiring one after another. Judging from the excitement on their faces, the scene of Shi Mu defeating Wang Tianhao had left a deep imprint on their minds. It would definitely be circulated among their fellow members very soon. The two of you were really unkind to me this time. The opponent was extremely powerful, but you didn't bother to inform me beforehand. Did you think that I wouldn't come if I knew? Shi Mu asked angrily. Brother Shi, please forgive us this time. We were definitely at fault, and we won't let you go without compensating you for it, Feng Li said, embarrassed at Shi Mu's bluntness. But please do believe us, brother Shi. We had difficulties informing you about the details this time. We had guessed that some proud guy of the Jin gang had challenged us, and we didn't know Wang Tianhao would have anything to do with it. Moreover, Wang Tianhao left us no time to investigate our opponent. We were caught completely unprepared, Gao Yuan said, quickly providing a convincing logic. If that was the case, then it's excusable. Otherwise, I would have really considered not working with your Black Fox gang anymore. Well, what did you both want to tell me? Shi Mu nodded as he heard the explanation. The tension between the two parties seemed to ease a little bit. Thank you for your understanding. Brother Shi, is there a chance that we could have you as our real leader? Feng Li first sighed with relief, then added with a solemn face. The question did not come as a surprise to Shi Mu. He asked lightly. So you want me to take the position of the actual Fierce Fists, the second leader of the Black Fox? Not the second, but the first. The real boss. Give me a nod and I'll assemble all the boys together to hand over the top seat to you, Feng Li readily answered Shi Mu. Big brother Feng, that's not what we had decided. Gao Yuan was taken aback at such a rash promise. Third brother, can't you see that the Black Fox gang can survive without the two of us? But without brother Shi's help, it would be vanquished within a month by the other Feng City gangs. The territory of the Black Fox gang has grown 4 times its original size. Do you still think we will be able to manage such a big gang? Feng Li delivered the truth with a forced smile, rendering Gao Yuan speechless. He was only able to resist in his heart. I'll apologize only once. I've got no intentions of getting involved in gangs and I can only promise you my limited cooperation. Brother Feng, you are well aware of my ambition. I've devoted myself to the path of martial arts, and other things will only be a waste of my time, Shi Mu refused after he had quietly considered the offer. Brother Shi, are you sure you don't need more time to think about the offer? I know about your great ambition, but the problems you will encounter on the path to becoming a martial artist will exceed your imagination. But with just one nod you could have hundreds of fellows at your service, right now. Don't you think that is a good bargain? Feng Li said in a compelling tone. Although he was in despair, he tried his luck for the second time. That won't tempt me, so you should just drop the idea. Also, the cooperation between us will come to an end as soon as I manage to acquire Qi sensing. Shi Mu shook his head resolutely and left. Feng Li wanted to open his mouth, but did not say a word. Gao Yuan was also silent. Shi Mu did not immediately return home. Instead, he took off the Fierce Fists costume, packed it up and visited the Lu Feng Martial Arts Club. He did not leave the club until after he had gone through another round of the devastating exercise of being struck with iron sticks at acupuncture points all over his body. Then he left for his city residence, sporting a contorted face and a bruised body, bearing insufferable pains. As he limped on, he was unaware of the fact that two young girls were pointing at him from the third story of a flashy restaurant. "Yu Huan, is that your elder step-brother? He looks like a wretched cripple. Could some strong boys have bullied him in a club?" observed an attractive girl in a yellow blouse. A glamorously dressed girl of the same age was sitting opposite her. "Step-brother? He's my father's real son, so that makes him my blood brother," the girl in the glamorous clothes retorted with a solemn face, obviously irritated by her companion's remarks. She moved her eyes from Shi Mu's passing figure. She was Shi Mu's younger sister Shi Yu Huan, and though he had only met her once, but she was now readily defending him from condemnation. "It's the truth, but apart from the seventh aunt and you, nobody accepts him in our family. Judging from his presently tattered clothes, it doesn't seem like he's got the makings of a warrior, does he? It's a pity that we are giving him our only Qi-Ling pill then," the girl in yellow replied haughtily. "Humph! I know there is a ploy going on here, or why else would you be so nice to invite me here for dinner? It looks like someone's been bought by Uncle Wu to persuade me," Shi Yu Huan replied with a sardonic snort, perceiving her companion's intentions. "Cousin Yu Huan, you are wrong this time. Uncle Wu didn't ask me to do this, his son Jin Tian did. He was certain that if you persuaded Shi Mu to give up the pill on his own initiative, your mother wouldn't refuse. Besides, Shi Mu will be compensated properly for it," the girl in yellow said, laughing proudly at the missed guess. "Though I've only met Shi Mu once, I could sense that he wasn't the kind to get easily persuaded. Moreover, my mother feels bad for his mother. She won't let the Jin family bully him, without taking any action. Go and tell Jin Tian to give up his schemes." Shi Yu Huan answered bluntly. "Well, all right. I'm only doing what I was paid to do. I'll convey your words to Jin Tian," the girl in the yellow blouse replied. She waved the topic off and didn't mention it again, proving to be unexpectedly easy to handle. "Judging from your temper, you won't do so unless I pay you a huge amount of money," Shi Yu Huan said, curling her lips. The different types of delicious dishes on the table failed to interest her. "That's for sure. Except me, who do you think he would turn to? I'm the closest to you in our family. By the way, did you notice my newly bought jade hairpin? What do you think of it?" Jin Yuzhen said, changing the topic in high spirits. She didn't really care about the aborted persuasion, and was happy to instead talk about an extremely exquisite jade hairpin, which she produced from her sleeve. Shi Yu Huan was surprised to see the jade hairpin. "That's quite strange. If I remember correctly, you rarely buy any jewelry. You have always been proud of the beauty you were born with. What's so strange about it? There's a saying, a girl will doll herself up for him who loves her." Jin Yuzhen said with a thin smile. "For him who loves her? You don't mean Wu Hua, do you?" Shi Yu Huan was stunned, her eyes were wide open. "Wu Hua, that good-for-nothing stalker? How could that be possible? I am talking about Wang Tianhao of the Jin Gang Club. He is the son of the Wangs, who are said to have blood warriors in their family." Jin Yuzhen answered without thinking. "Wang Tianhao, who is known for his accomplished art of the blazing spear. The one who is at level 10 in body tempering, and is said to be the top martial disciple of Feng City? Is he going to visit our Jin family?" Shi Yu Huan said, her eyes lighting up expectantly as she heard the name. "Mind you, Shi Yu Huan. Wang Tianhao is my target, don't you think about competing with me?" Jin Yuzhen became somewhat dejected on seeing her companion's excitement, lacking in self-confidence. "Nonsense! I just wish to see with my own eyes if the legendary blazing spear deserves his reputation. He is only able to retain his title because experts like us from the big clans don't pick a fight with him. How else could he manage to get the title of the top martial disciple so easily?" Shi Yu Huan stared disapprovingly at her companion. "You're such a tomboy. Well, you can say whatever. But I know that Wang Tianhao is brilliant. Besides, he has the blood of the Wang family. This time, our grandfather has personally invited him to our manor, so he must have a marriage on his mind. Please don't compete with me when he visits. By the way, are you certain that you want to take your brother's side in this issue? No matter what happens? I'm afraid Jin Tian won't give up the pill so easily, said Jin Yuzhen with a hearty smile. Her face lit up with happiness as she spoke about the upcoming marriage. Go and tell Jin Tian this. Even if Shi Mu has no skills, he is still my brother by blood. It's okay if Jin Tian tries to acquire the pill through honest ways. But if he ever tries to devise any evil plans, I'll break his legs right before the enrollment test to Kai Yuan Martial Arts School. Shi Yu Huan's delicate face turned cold as ice at her companion's question. Jin Yuzhen pursed her lips as she saw Shi Yu Huan's stern face, who continued defending her brother's honor. Shi Mu was quite unaware that he had lessened in his blood sister's eyes. On returning to his residence, he immediately immersed himself in the boiling water of his medicine bath. Covering his face with a hot towel and leaning against the basin's edge, Shi Mu squeezed his eyes shut. He continued to thoroughly rehearse his long-harbored plan once again, despite the disruptions in his thoughts. The golden hamster, Shi Mu suddenly murmured to himself, breaking the silence. Chapter 16, The Golden Hamster. Early morning, 3 days later. Shi Mu trotted alone to the rolling mountains where he had previously hunted wild animals. He was carrying a huge parcel with him, which was about half the height of an average man. He climbed 7 or 8 hilltops without resting, and eventually found himself on the periphery of a bamboo forest. It seemed to be unusually verdant, shining with an emerald green luster. It took him a full hour to fully investigate the bamboo forest, spread across an area of about 17 acres. He put that huge parcel down gently only after he had found the traces left by his target. He then began fumbling to take out a rather small shovel and started digging a pit trap in the nearby ground. Strangely enough, his movements of digging the pit were excessively cautious. It seemed as if he was afraid of attracting attention. In this way he was able to finish the digging of a water jar-sized pit only by noon. The pit was several meters in depth. Shi Mu then took out some bottles and jars from the parcel, and dropped an unknown powder and some fluids into the pit. He covered the pit entirely with twigs, and added many bamboo leaves to the surface. He scattered some mud onto the pit, finally finishing his arrangement, having laid a delicate trap. Shi Mu seemed quite content as he observed his arrangement from every angle, and a trace of a smile flashed across his face. He had learned the arrangement of the trap as well as how to make the powder and fluids from Zhonggong Mi Dian, which contained the secret arts of the Zhong clan. His confidence of conquering his target would have been low in the absence of these skills, despite his ability to manage 7 cuts in one movement. He gauged the time by looking up at the sun, high in the sky, and then fished out a paper ball without hesitating. There was mysterious golden-colored dough inside it. Shi Mu emptied out the fluids contained in a small bottle. Immediately, an overpowering and indescribable fragrance began wafting through the air. I hope that this secret bait recipe from the old hunter in the city will turn out to be useful. Otherwise, the 32 liang of silver I paid for this material would be a waste. Shi Mu murmured to himself as he shook his wrist, sending the golden dough down into the middle of the trap. He then took out a black wooden knife and a rather large emerald green cloak to cover himself up. He threw the parcel behind a huge rock and walked back to his trap. He then lowered his body to the ground and lay flat beside the trap, becoming as still as he could be. From a distance, the ground where the trap had been set up was completely flat, and nothing strange could be seen. Shi Mu held his breath as he lay still on the ground, and the warm air that puffed out of his nostrils was thin enough to be invisible. He barely blinked his eyes as he stared hard at the bamboo wood. The information he had obtained flashed through his mind once more. The golden hamster, also known as the medicine hunting hamster, was a unique animal found only in Chuanzhou. It was a variation of the common piebald mountain mouse which would bite its brood siblings to death as soon as it was born. In its third month, golden fur would begin to appear on its back. After this, it would achieve the ability to find and take some herbs needed to advance to a higher level. After a year, the golden hamster would reach its age of maturity, and its talent would be awakened. This would enable it to find rare herbs without any difficulty. Hence, it was considered that possessing a tamed golden hamster was equivalent to living with a born master of herbs, who could seek rare medicine. However, although it was worth an enormous amount of money, the hamster could rarely be found in the market. This was because few would be willing to sell their medicine hunting masters, even if they did have one. Shi Mu had found one by accident when he chased a wild fox all the way to the edge of the bamboo forest. He was overjoyed at finding one of these hugely famous animals of Quanzhou. However, he had been too cautious to take immediate action at that time. Though the golden hamster did not belong to the rank of holy animals, it was still capable of deceiving many. It seemed to vanish into thin air by dashing at the speed of lightning, keeping its shadows invisible. Because of its inherent vigilance, it would be nearly impossible to catch it again if it wasn't caught in the first attempt. During this period, every time Shi Mu came to the hilltop to practice, he went out of his way to observe this gold hamster's routine. By now his progress had reached a point where he could do 7 cuts in one movement, using his 13 series of gale force knife art. Moreover, he had also learned the trap, as well as the bait-making method from Zhonggong Mi Dian. Therefore, he had finally made up his mind to putting his plan into action today. At the time when Shi Mu was finishing laying out the trap to hunt the golden hamster, something else was happening inside the hall of the Jingang Martial Arts Club in Feng City. A sandy-haired elder was angrily reproaching Wang Tianhao, who stood in front of him. "What tricks are you playing this time? I had asked you to find a girl to marry from the Jin family, not to beat up and pick a fight with the youngsters of the Jin family. Uncle Su, how could you blame me for beating them? Those guys asked me to instruct their arts themselves. It's just that I lost some control of myself. But as far as their skills are concerned, no Jin other than Shi Yu Huan is capable of withstanding even my first strike. They turned out to be a pack of good-for-nothing idlers, wasting half of my day." Wang Tianhao stretched himself with a yawn, displaying an air of complete carelessness. "You bastard, the Jin family is Wang family's ally in Quanzhou. Who told you to attack them instead of looking at their girls? Well, now I will have to clear up your mess myself by going to their manor to apologize to their head. From now on you are supposed to just stay here and practice your blazing spear. Before you accomplish the next stance of the blazing spear art, you are confined to the club." Elder Su ordered as he stared at Wang Tianhao with his eyes wide open. He found it rather difficult to handle his nephew. "I don't care about being confined at all. After all, the day of the competition is only half a month away. So I just need time to save my energy," Wang Tianhao answered in a cheerful and excited manner. "Humph! I have no hope for you till you start paying attention," Uncle Su snorted. "Why? Do you mean to say that there are other powerful people in the various clubs?" Wang Tianhao said with his spirits highly elated, as he sensed some overtones in his uncle's reprimand. "You crazy kid! I guess you'd lose sleep if I refused to tell you," he said. Not sure whether to laugh or cry at his nephew's response. "Ha ha, Uncle Su knows me so well," Wang Tianhao said demurely, his face now compliant and sweet. "As far as I know, the Fei Hong Club has this time asked a genius to help them recover from their misfortune of always coming last. It is said that although the guy is not a blood warrior, he has an innate body of solid earth," Uncle Su answered with a solemn face. "The body of solid earth, also known for its defense force? Could that be the legendary body which is immune to bodily harm?" Wang Tianhao asked, surprised. "Ha ha! As you may know, it's rather difficult to handle. Judging from your current skills, I don't think your blazing spear will be able to break his defense," Uncle Su replied with a sneer. Maybe I won't be able to break the defense of a solid earth body, but I do know a martial disciple in our city who would definitely be able to. It will be worthwhile to watch the fight if he takes part in this competition." Wang Tianhao laughed heartily as something struck him, after pausing for a brief thought. "Oh? Do you mean the fierce fists you mentioned the other day?" Uncle Su's eyes now were alight with excitement. "Exactly, I've witnessed his skills with my own eyes. The reach of his strength must be at least 500 kilograms, or there is no way he could snap the iron spear with his bare hands," Wang Tianhao answered without hesitation. "Well, that does seem to be true, according to what you've told me. This fierce fists could really confront the solid earth body to a certain extent. But it's a shame that competitors have to be martial disciples under the age of 18. If Fierce Fists is already the leader of a small gang, he must be over 18, Uncle Su said, quite sure of his reasoning. That's true. But if he turns out to be of my age, then I'll definitely fight him with all my strength. Even if it is only for the title of the city's top martial disciple, Wang Tianhao said in a proud tone, nodding his head. Uncle Su was speechless when he heard such an ambitious proclamation. He was proud of his nephew in every aspect, except for his arrogance, for Wang Tianhao was always showing off. Whiz! Whiz! 7 black knife shadows rolled and vanished. After smashing several invisible shadows of light yellow, the knife finally returned to its owner in the shadows. Creak! A little golden animal, the size of a fist, fell squeaking from mid-air and into the huge pit waiting below. The trap had already been half revealed. Shi Mu was too overjoyed to hold his wooden knife when he saw that his sudden sneak attack had hit the target. He threw the knife into mid-air and grabbed it with one hand. He then threw out a huge silk net to cover the surface of the pit. Pang! As the little golden animal tried to dash out of the pit, it bumped against the silk net and was forced to drop down to the bottom again. After about 10 attempts, the golden animal's jump grew powerless. And soon, no sound could be heard from the pit. Shi Mu then approached the pit cautiously, and stole a quick glance inside it. The little golden animal was now weak, and was no longer able to move its body as it was glued to the colorful fluids at the bottom. Shi Mu's mind relaxed at the sight, and he turned to a large nearby rock. He fumbled with his package to find an iron wire cage, and rushed with it to the pit in excitement. However, he became pale at sight he saw upon turning around. A blue-robed man with a sword over his shoulder stood beside the pit, which nobody could have known about. The little golden animal was already in his hand, struggling fiercely. The man was rocking his head back and forth, observing it from every angle. The little one had to be the golden hamster which had earlier been glued unconscious to the bottom of the pit. "Elder warrior, I believe that golden hamster is mine," said Shi Mu politely, containing his anxiety with a deep breath. The sight of the golden hamster in the blue-robed man's hand made Shi Mu's heart leap to his throat. "Well, young boy, do you think I am a thief who would grab your prey?" said the blue-robed man in a cold voice, as he turned his body. Shi Mu could make out that the blue-robed man was a Daoist priest, probably in his 30s. His eyebrows had grown out all the way to his temples, and his eyes were as sharp as a knife. His eyes displayed a fierce countenance which seemed to be murderous and brutal. A glance is enough for me to tell that this senior is an outstanding warrior. But I caught this golden hamster with all my effort, thought Shi Mu, scarcely bracing himself to persuade the blue-robed man. Just then, he suddenly felt an unusual and strange sense of coldness rushing onto his face. Immediately, he was frozen as though in ice, and his whole body was cold and numb. The enigmatic blue-robed man had resorted to violent treachery in no time. The notorious cold sword, intending to kill a mere martial disciple for his treasure. I wonder if anyone would believe my story if I made it public. Shi Mu heard a heavenly melodious voice as he was frozen into stillness, nearly falling unconscious. Chapter 17, The Demon Witch of Tianyin. A rustling sound came from the bamboo forest, and a young girl wandered out. She seemed to be fairy-like in her white dress, and could have been 16 at most. She had a graceful and slender figure, and her breasts were bulging from her blouse. Her serene feet were as white as snow, and her dark hair tumbled down to her waist. She blinked her large bright eyes, flashing beautiful rays of light from them. Not a single man would have been able to resist the seductively amorous fragrance that emanated from her body. The Daoist priest shouted harshly at the sight of the barefoot nymph-like girl, as if he had seen a hideous snake or scorpion. The demon witch! I didn't think you would still be tailing me. Do you really believe you can defeat my cold sword with your witchcraft? He asked, and in a flash he turned his one hand over his back oar and gripped the handle of his long sword. Cold sword, you should be clear about why I'm following you. Poor dear sister Lan Yun was so into you. How can you be so unconcerned while she lies under the ground, unable to rest in peace? The beautiful girl said, blinking her clear and shining eyes as if they were heavenly streams. She walked slowly and steadily towards the middle-aged Daoist priest. You witch! I've told you 100 times, Yun Er's death has nothing to do with me. She died because our appointment venue's location had been leaked, the middle-aged Daoist said, his face twisting with fierceness. He roared at the girl as he took out his sword, which began reflecting blue light. I don't care whether you are being honest or not. You promised to live and die with Yun Er, so I'm only here to help you fulfill your oath. You don't have to thank me, the barefoot girl said this with a light smile. She raised her sleeves to reveal a short ruler, which was as white as jade. The ruler was no more than 15 centimeters in length and 6 in width, but wisps of white fog were coiling up around its surface, making it look extremely mysterious. The legendary ice ruler. Isn't that the ultimate weapon of your Tianyin sect? You're a lunatic for stealing such a sacred weapon for the sake of a dead woman. Aren't you afraid of the seniors of your sect? They'll render you incapable of practicing martial arts once they find out. The Daoist priest managed to stammer his weak threat. He had prepared to put up a desperate fight, but his expression froze at the sight of the ruler. Well, that's not your business. Let's not waste any more time. Now I will send you to meet Yun Er. The barefoot girl gave him a faint smile as she shook her ruler slightly. Suddenly, the air around them stirred invisibly, and white fog rolled out of thin air. The fog quickly turned into white flowers from the swirl. The flowers seemed to be as big as bowls. Want to kill me? Stop dreaming. Whiz! In a flash, the Daoist priest unexpectedly flung the little animal at the girl. He stomped his foot hard on the ground, and shot backwards into mid-air. He then finally vanished into the dark woods, resembling a giant bird. Witch, I'll make your theft of the legendary ice ruler public. Let's see what your sect will do to you. The vile oath came from the woods. The last few words of the oath were faintly heard as the priest fled deep into the forest. It was obvious that he had already gone far away. What an idiotic man! A mere fake scared you out of your wits. But my soul-hunting incense has caught you now. You will never be able to escape its power range. Oh, this golden hamster has opened its holy eyes, the barefoot girl said. She had lifted her slender fingers to catch the golden hamster with ease, and was about to ridicule the Daoist priest further when her eyes lit up with surprise. She lowered her head and looked briefly at the little animal in her hand, when something unexpected happened. Well, I was wondering why Cold Sword would grab a golden hamster without any kind of hesitation. It is a hamster with holy pupils, which will soon become a holy animal, said the barefoot girl, withdrawing her jade ruler. She held the golden animal affectionately to her breast, stroking it tenderly. The tiny green eyes of the mouse-like golden animal trembled the whole time, but it didn't dare to move its body as it was stroked by the 10 slender fingers. Oh yes, there's another little guy. After fussing over the golden hamster for a while, the barefoot girl suddenly found Shi Mu standing nearby. His body was as still as ice, and was covered with a thin layer of white frost. He could only move his eyes, with which he was staring fixedly at the barefoot girl. She giggled and wandered over to Shi Mu in an unhurried pace. Shi Mu moved his eyes slowly and with difficulty, following the girl's movements without looking away. Well, that's funny, the barefoot girl smiled, her face showing a trace of interest. Suddenly, she deliberately began swinging her body from left to right. Though he was unable to move his body, Shi Mu's eyeballs began to move left and right to trace the girl's movements. It was indeed a hilarious sight. Haha, that's so funny, the barefoot girl giggled demurely as she stopped in front of Shi Mu. The little animal was at her breast, and she was arching her back as if her stomach ached because of the laughter. The girl laughed for a long time before she straightened her back again. She then raised her sleeves, and a puff of white fog rushed out and quickly seeped into Shi Mu's body. Then something surprising happened. The layer of frost on Shi Mu's body began to melt at a rapid speed, a process that the naked eye could follow clearly. With a loud thud, Shi Mu fell down heavily into the mud. The impact was so hard that he couldn't manage to raise his back, and could only slightly raise his head. Then he saw a pair of slender feet which resembled lotus rhizomes. The 10 toenails were painted bright red, as seductive as fresh petals. Beautiful, the owner of the slender feet asked leisurely. Shi Mu blushed deeply at the question, his whole face turning red. A sudden strength strangely began to grow inside him, enabling him to slowly rise from the ground. He then studied the extremely beautiful face, looking weirder than he could have ever imagined. Well, little guy. You know, if you were 2 or 3 years older than you are right now and looked at me in this way, I'd have instantly gouged your eyes out, the barefooted girl said as she rolled her beautiful eyes. The little animal at her breast gave out a horrified squeak. What's your name? Shi Mu finally opened his mouth to ask. Although his voice was somewhat husky, the girl was surprised to find that it was calm enough. You really think I'll tell you? The girl answered with a grin, after a moment's surprise. I can only go to your family and propose to you once I know your name, Shi Mu said as he fixed his eyes on the girl. His face displayed a small amount of passion. What? Say that again. I didn't quite hear you clearly, the barefoot girl's eyes were wide open as she asked in surprise. She assumed she had misheard him. I wish to ask you to be my wife. I shall make you my wife, Shi Mu answered without hesitation, looking determined and resolute. What nonsense! Do you even know who I am or how old I am? How can you dare to say such a thing? Asked the barefoot girl. Although she had always been cruel and merciless with a shrewd and deep mind, the young man's words had caught her off guard. Are you already engaged? Or are you in your 40s or 50s? Shi Mu asked, knitting his eyebrows. Of course not, and I'm only in my 20s. Wait, why should I tell you that? You, the barefoot girl answered subconsciously at first, and then grew angry and shameful at her carelessness. In your 20s, and not yet engaged with anyone. That's perfect. I don't care what you are, because I fell in love with you at first sight. I'll definitely make you my wife, Shi Mu said earnestly as her answer put him at ease. Haha, you think you can marry me just because you like me? I wouldn't agree even if a Hotian warrior had asked me, let alone a mere martial disciple like you. Well, I am wasting my time speaking to you. Honestly, I don't believe any man's honey-sweet words. I've decided not to marry anyone in my life, the girl said, finally behaving like herself to a certain extent. She then giggled, avoiding Shi Mu's fervent looks. My mother used to tell me that if I ever meet a girl I really like, I must tell her as soon as possible. This way I wouldn't miss out on a perfect marriage. I, Shi Mu, vow in all seriousness to marry this girl in front of me, within my lifetime. If I ever go back on my word, I shall be pierced by 10,000 arrows and be chopped to death by axes, Shi Mu said. His unblinking eyes never left the girl, and his hands were raised. The deadly oath had been made. A thunder boomed from the sky gratuitously just as Shi Mu finished his last words. No one knew whether it had been a coincidence or not. The barefoot girl slightly parted her red lips, but was unable to utter even a single word. She gazed at Shi Mu with her beautiful eyes. After a long time had passed, she burst out into a charming laughter. That's so funny. Me. The demon witch of Tianyin sect is finally proposed to one day. That too, by a teenage boy. Good, good. I won't let you say that I didn't give you a chance. If you manage to become a Houtian warrior before the age of 30, then come for me in the Wanlong Mountains at the Tianyin sect. Only then will I tell you my real name. And take this, it's your payment for the holy animal, the girl said as she held her laughter. She straightened her back and threw a bottle at Shi Mu, then covered something with her sleeves. Pu. A sound was heard. Suddenly, a strong wind began blowing around them, and white clouds emerged to lift the girl to a height of over 30 meters. She floated away in the faraway sky, leaving Shi Mu with only a faint and melodious last warning. I'll tell you one more thing. The holy animal had been faking unconsciousness that time. If the cold sword had not caught it before it fled, you may really have returned empty-handed. Only a split second had passed from the moment she had thrown the bottle to when she flew off with the animal. She left so soon that it seemed like she was fleeing from something. She really flew. The demon witch of Tianyin, Shi Mu murmured to himself, as he stood dumbstruck and at a loss for words. He was frozen looking in the direction where the girl had disappeared, looking into the distance for a long time. He finally came to himself after a long time had passed. He smiled bitterly to himself as he glanced at the bottle and the trap he had earlier made. Try to steal a chicken, only to end up losing the rice. That's the saying, isn't it? Hundreds of silver and the animal, all gone, he said. However, he could not help but be curious about the contents of the bottle. After all, an enigmatic girl like her could not have given him anything ordinary. Shi Mu only gave it a brief thought before he opened the bottle, regarding it as his possession now. A spherical white-colored pill rolled out, swirling. It was as big as his thumb, and a silver light seemed to be glittering faintly on its surface. A Qiling pill! Shi Mu cried out involuntarily, after he had studied the pill's appearance. Chapter 18, Climbing to the Next Level. This was the exact same Qiling pill that he had seen innumerable times in collections of martial arts illustrations. Even then, he couldn't believe his own eyes and continued to gape at it. He examined the pill thoroughly and then smelled it, causing a pungent smell to penetrate his nose immediately. It really was a Qiling pill. It was said that the market price of one pill was as high American Samoa 100,000 liang of silver. However, someone had offered to pay 30,000 liang for the pill in a black market trade, but was unable to find a source to buy from. This indeed proved the generosity of the barefoot girl. Naturally, overjoyed at the unexpected fortune, Shi Mu became more curious about the girl's identity. He could now see that his oath of marrying her must have seemed delirious to the girl, like when a lazy toad wishes to eat swan meat. The condition of reaching the level of Houtian warrior before the age of 30 weighed heavily on his mind, as it would prove to be an exciting feat. He knew that it would be next to impossible for him to become a Houtian warrior before the age of 30. However, the girl made him throb with passion for the first time in his life. Moreover, his unchanging will would never let him back down from the formidable challenge. Hence, it seemed that he could only proceed with small steps by abandoning unnecessary thoughts. His present goal was to acquire Qi sensing before aiming to reach the level of a Houtian warrior. Shi Mu let out a sigh, finally purging himself of the disturbing thoughts. He then focused his attention on the pill in his hand. Coupled with the other Qiling pill promised by Aunt Zhen, this pill instilled him with quite a bit of confidence of being able to acquire Qi sensing. Several days later, striking sounds roared like torrential rain in the closed room of Fenglu Club's backyard. Shi Mu's upper body was bare while he was doing a martial arts squat, and Li Qinghai was striking him with a stick in his hand. However, this time his skin was not becoming red or swollen like it used to. Instead, his skin looked overly pale. Each strike on his body made a strange droning sound, as if the stick had struck wood rather than a human body. Shi Mu's body had been struck countless number of times, but his face was surprisingly not contorted with pain. Instead, his features displayed an irresistible excitement. His mouth was open, and he was echoing the strikes with low shouts of his own. Li Qinghai had also taken his jacket off. He stood wearing only a short-sleeved shirt, exposing the hard muscles all over his body. Sweat was dripping down his body as he continuously waved his stick, but refused to pause even for a brief second to wipe himself. His eyes were fixed on Shi Mu in a feverish excitement. Boom! A thunderous sound was heard as a strike fell on a particular acupuncture point on Shi Mu's chest. Shi Mu's face flushed, as if a great deal of energy had been instilled in him by the strike. Everything returned to normal the next moment, but his face soon turned red again. This process was repeated another 10 times or so, before crisp firecracker-like sounds began coming out from Shi Mu's body. Simultaneously, the muscles on the surface of his body began to bulge and move like mice. Haha! That's it! I'd never thought that someone could really manage to go through a half-year's torture to reach the 11th level in body tempering. Li Qinghai burst out into laughter at the sight and threw away his stick. The credit goes to instructor Li's painstaking training. Shi Mu answered with a deep breath, overjoyed at his achievement. The cracking sounds from his body stopped abruptly, and his muscles also instantly returned to their normal state. He had finally reached the 11th level in body tempering. Don't thank me. I'm only doing what you have paid me for. But this has only worked out for you because you are a sturdy guy. Others would never be able to withstand the punishment. Li Qinghai waved off Shi Mu's flattery. Anyway, I'm still thankful for your kind instruction. You have helped me reach the 11th stage, Shi Mu answered, smiling. He tried to move his arms and legs in order to feel the change inside him. Well, if you really want to thank me, then win the championship taking place in a few days, Li Qinghai said in a straightforward tone. Haha, that should be easy. I'll do my best, Shi Mu said, smiling confidently. 7 days later, at the Gate of Tianlu Club, the largest club in Feng City. The leader of the club was Feng Langchan, and he resembled a black bear in stature. He was happily greeting his guests along with one of the instructors from his club. Among the guests were Li Qinghai and some other Feng Lu members. Shi Mu and 2 other martial disciples were closely following Li Qinghai, and a bulky fellow with a reddish face. Haha! Elder brother Li and brother Min, you've grown more energetic within months. Well, it seems that leader Feng has also grown more robust in a very short time. Haha! Brother Li, I guess you mean I've put on a lot of weight. How dare I? Brother Feng is the actual leader among our 4 clubs. The other 3 leaders like me are only nominal, and are rarely seen on ordinary occasions. Right, has that Fox Tian of Fei Hong Club and Old Wang of Jin Gang Club arrived yet? Haha, Brother Tian will hit the roof if he hears that. Sure, the 2 have already arrived and are waiting at the competition venue. These are your 3 candidates. Lang Fengchan laughed like the Maitreya Buddha. Then his eyes focused on Shi Mu and the 2 other martial disciples who he had seen performing quite well at their club before. However skilled they may be, they can still never compete with nephew Feng. My guess is that this time either we, or Fei Hong will come last in the competition, Li Qinghai smiled faintly. The big fellow with the reddish face only smiled briefly in reply, seeming like a man of few words. Brother Li, I'm afraid you are quite mistaken. It would be difficult for Fei Hong to come last even if they wanted to, Lang Fengchan said, smiling bitterly. Hey? What do you mean? Li Qinghai was really surprised, as was the reddish-faced man. Brother Li, you should get better ways of obtaining more information in the future. Haven't you heard of the newcomer in Fei Hong Club? He has the body of solid earth, Feng Langchan said, his face becoming serious. The body of solid earth. The red-faced man of Lu Feng Club could not help but open his mouth to ask in surprise. It seems that Fei Hong Club is ready for a desperate fight this time, and it is quite likely that they will win the tournament. That will make things difficult for us, Li Qinghai murmured to himself, silently estimating the odds of Shi Mu's stone-breaking fist defeating the body of solid earth. Meanwhile, Shi Mu was curiously studying the other two martial disciples at the gate of Tianlu Club. The gate was way more imposing than the one at their club. It was covered with golden nails and flanked by a giant stone lion on either side. Lang Fengchan invited them in after some small talk, and Shi Mu also followed them in through the gate. After entering through the gate, a huge practice ground could be seen. A pre-arranged ring made entirely out of thick round logs was placed in the middle of the ground for the martial art tournament. It was over a 1/3 of a meter in height and 3 meters in both length and width. The entire practice ground was empty except for where about 10 martial disciples were standing in 3 groups beside the ring. It was obvious that they were from the other 3 clubs. The 3 of you have to go and wait there. Instructor Tian and I will be with you in a while, Li Qinghai said briefly, and then followed Feng Langchan to the wing room behind the practice ground, along with the red-faced man. Shi Mu, Sun Jun, let's go and steal a look at their skills, suggested the eldest one among the 3 young men as soon as Li Qinghai left. He smiled, and one could see that his body was quite athletic. We have already arrived for the tournament. It won't be of any use to know their strengths now. This time, Brother Li and I have already reached the intermediate level in several martial disciple level skills, well in time before the tournament, so it makes sense for us to be here as candidates. But you are a newcomer. Even if you have managed to reach the 10th level in body tempering, I've still never seen you perform your skills at our club. So how can I be sure that you'll perform well in the tournament? I wonder why Instructor Li had to make up the number by adding you, said the lanky man out of the 3 young men. He had obviously been nursing a grievance, which he now vented to Shi Mu. Haha! I did not want to take part in this myself. But I could not refuse when Instructor Li asked me to, Shi Mu answered with ease, with a tinge of lethargy in his mannerism. He did not seem even a tiny bit angry at the reproach. You! Sun Jun, do you want to make a fool of yourself in front of guys from the other clubs? Interrupted the young man whose family name was Li. He seemed rather displeased, and he decisively stopped the lanky fellow from saying more. It seemed that the young Li held authority over Sun Jun, who snorted and stopped the attack at Shi Mu. Then the 3 walked to the ring, looking at the others who stood nearby up and down. Well! After he had glanced at the groups of candidates who stood there, Shi Mu recognized a few faces. They belonged to the ones he had fought while playing the role of Fierce Fists. However, only 2 young men caught his attention. One of them was a tall young man surrounded by several Tianlu youngsters. The other young man was wearing white clothes and was sitting cross-legged on the ground by himself, scrubbing a dark black spear. Feng Jun, Wang Tianhao. It only took a glance for Shi Mu to be able to tell who they were. The former had taken his fist 3 strikes with incredible endurance, while the latter had quit the fight after showing off his amazing spear skills. Both had left him with a lasting impression, but neither would be able to recognize Shi Mu because of his true appearance at the moment. They only cast a cursory glance at him as the 3 young men walked past them. A young man with a pockmarked face wearing Fei Hong Club's uniform came to greet the 3 young men. Li Yunfeng. So you Lu Feng fellows have finally arrived. Then it seems that it won't be long before the tournament begins. I can't wait to encounter your Python Bones fist again. Haha! Gu Zhong, I will definitely fight with all my strength if you are my opponent in the tournament. But I just heard from some instructors that you have a newcomer claiming to have the body of solid earth. Is that true? The young Li asked briefly, his eyes involuntarily scanning the other 2 Fei Hong martial disciples. One of them seemed like he was as old as Gu Zhong and had a puffy face, while the other looked like he was 14 or 15. The second one seemed thin and weak, and had dark skin. He looked extremely inconspicuous with his ears sticking out and his chin like an ape's. Haha! This is younger brother Jie. Since you met him in the last tournament, there is no need to introduce him. This one is younger brother Tai Dong, and he just joined us a month ago, Gu Zhong paused at the question for a moment, then carried on with his introductions with a smile. Brother Li, the puffy-faced young man greeted them with clenched fists. However, the boy named Tai Dong only rolled his eyes, acting completely indifferent to them. Li Yunfeng's face showed a bit of embarrassment at Tai Dong's behavior. Ah! Brother Li, younger brother Tai didn't mean to offend you. He has grown up on an isolated island and is therefore quite a silent boy. Well, you should now introduce the two younger brothers behind you. Gu Zhong smiled annoyingly, trying to ease the situation. He was talking to Li, but his attention was focused on Shi Mu and Sun Jun, who were standing behind Li. Chapter 19, The Body of Solid Earth. Shi Mu? I've heard the name before. He's the one who is said to have neared the 10th level in body tempering at the mere age of 15. Is this his older brother? Asked Gu Zhong, astonished at Shi Mu's adult-like stature. Although there weren't many who could reach the intermediate level in body tempering before they turned 20, a few did manage to do it at the age of 18 or even 19. However, it would undoubtedly take a genius to reach the 10th level at merely 15. One could count these geniuses on one's fingers throughout the city. This meant that these genius martial disciples must have a higher chance of acquiring qi sensing than the others, and would have a greater potential if they managed to become Hotian warriors. Thinking thus to himself, Gu Zhong immediately greeted Shi Mu with clasped fists. Haha, brother Shi has achieved the 10th level at such an early age. You will definitely outshine the others in this competition, he said, beaming with admiration. Thank you for your kind words, Shi Mu greeted him back with clasped fists, smiling kindly. You have completed the 10th level, the dark-skinned Tai Dong unexpectedly shouted his question at Shi Mu. The ape-like young man's voice was harsh and grinding, as if it had not yet matured. Yes. Shi Mu answered casually. Humph. I once fought a martial disciple of the 11th level, and I exhausted him in the end. He fainted right in the ring. He was unable to break my body of solid earth until the last moment. If that is the case, then I will definitely not be a match to you. It's a pity that I may not be your opponent then, Shi Mu only yawned in reply. Whoever my opponent may be, he will definitely shrink in front of my body of solid earth, Tai Dong asserted his forthcoming success clearly and proudly, before he turned and left. He did not glance at Sun Jun even once, who was standing right beside Shi Mu. Is he always so full of himself? Sun Jun's face became pale with rage as he unknowingly shouted in a loud voice. Haha, it's, stammered, Gu Zhong. Though he had always been skilled at peacemaking, he was now at his wits' end. Brother Gu, you should stop putting in a good word for the guy. To be frank, even our Feng Hong seniors hold some grudges against him. It's just that some instructors think he is priceless, which is why we can't help it. He may be full of himself, but his body of solid earth really does deserve its name. At least Brother Li and I will not be able to harm him at all, the puffy-faced younger brother Jia explained with a sardonic grin. Is the body of solid earth really that dreadful? Brother Li, if my memory serves me, your skilled water-splashing sword art is the best when it comes to fighting hard outer skills, said Li Yunfeng, surprised. Oh! You'll understand the power of a body of solid earth if you meet the young man in the ring. Words can't describe it, Gu Zhong answered with a bitter smile, reluctant to continue the conversation. Humph! Even if the body of solid earth has such a dreadful defense, I don't believe that Wang Tianhao's blazing spear would fail to find a way to conquer it. Sun Jun sneered after a brief silence. It'll be quite difficult to judge. In the last tournament, young master Wang Tianhao defeated everyone from the 4 clubs with his just learned blazing spear. Barely anyone was able to resist his skills. Now that 1 whole year has passed, Wang Tianhao's skills must have progressed greatly. Moreover, Wang Tianhao seems to be the most aggressive guy here. I've heard that he would even beat the seniors of his own club mercilessly if any of them were to get in his way. Gu Zhong shook his head vigorously in disapproval. Sun Jun, Li Yunfeng and some others turned to look at Wang Tianhao after Gu Zhong's remark. However, Shi Mu stood still as if he had heard nothing, gazing at the thin dark boy not far away. The young man in white scrubbing his spear seemed to feel the eyes on him, and so he suddenly lifted his head to meet their eyes. Li Yunfeng and the others were caught off guard as their look was returned. They looked away one after another, smiling embarrassedly. The young man in white glanced at them with a stony face, and then fixed his eyes on Shi Mu. He stood up suddenly to walk towards them, with his spear thrown back over his shoulder. "Wang, young master Wang, have you been well since we parted?" Gu Zhong was the first one to greet Wang Tianhao among the stunned group. "Who are you? Have we met before?" Wang Tianhao asked bluntly, casting a cold eye at him. Gu Zhong could not have been more embarrassed in this situation. Li Yunfeng and the others didn't dare to speak a word. They stood there as the young man looked at them. "What's your name? Which club are you from?" Wang Tianhao asked in a stone-cold voice. His eyes rested again on Shi Mu, sizing him up and down closely. He then drew his iron spear slowly from his back, and pointed it at Shi Mu. "Oh? Do you have some business with me?" Shi Mu frowned before he turned to look at young Master Wang. His eyes were unusually calm and clear, showing no fluster at all. "Have I met you before?" Wang Tianhao looked at Shi Mu, narrowing his eyes. "Absolutely not. This is the first time I've met the honorable young master," Shi Mu said assuredly, his eyes not blinking even for a moment. "Never? But you look so familiar to me." Wang Tianhao's spear was still pointed at Shi Mu, and a trace of suspicion flashed across his face. "Young Master Wang, have you met younger brother Shi Mu at some place in the city?" Li Yunfeng finally opened his mouth with a nervous cough, but in his mind he felt as strange as Wang Tianhao. He did have some knowledge of Shi Mu's background, but he could not think of any relation between the two even after racking his mind. Gu Zhong and Sun Jun had no clue either, and could only wonder. "Haha, all right. I might be mistaken. So your name's Shi Mu, right? Good, I hope to have a good fight with you in the ring." Wang Tianhao burst into laughter after he had looked at Shi Mu's unmoving face several times with narrowed eyes. After withdrawing his spear, he went away on his own. Gu Zhong, Li Yunfeng, as well as other fellows were left gaping at each other after this incident. No one knew what the top martial disciples' act had meant. "Brother Shi, do you know Wang Tianhao?" Li Yunfeng could not help but blurt out his question. "Certainly not, he's not quite an acquaintance," Shi Mu replied ambiguously, his hand stroking his chin. "What? What do you mean by not an acquaintance?" Li Yunfeng asked, his eyes wide open in surprise. He suddenly had the feeling that this Shi Mu in front of him was a mysterious figure. Gu Zhong and the others felt the same way. However, they felt it improper to pursue the inquiry after seeing how uninterested Shi Mu looked. "Senior Feng, did you see that?" Wang Tianhao just went up to the Lu Feng and Fei Hong guys and pointed his spear at them. But he returned after exchanging a few words. What trick is he playing? As the host for the competition, Tianlu Club could offer more than 3 candidates. In fact, they had as many as 7 or 8 candidates. Feng Jun, who stood in the middle, was the most famous among them. He wore a scar on his face, and his eyes were fierce and malicious. At the moment, Feng Jun was listening to his brother's talk, and simultaneously watching Wang Tianhao's movements with a ferocious glare in his eye. As the nephew of Tianlu Club's leader, he had learnt the brutal skill of the iron clothes body, which was unique to the Tianlu Club. He had also sharpened his black hands skill, which was a high-level martial disciple skill. Therefore, though he had missed the chance to get enrolled into Kaiyuan martial arts school the last time, he had never once seen his peers as a match for his abilities. Moreover, he had defeated the other clubs to win the championship in the competition many times. However, all his feats were rendered hollow when he had been defeated by Wang Tianhao last year. Wang Tianhao had beaten him with his spear without any difficulty, despite being many years junior to him. He had even stomped on his face inside the ring. The champion Feng Jun had never hated someone so bitterly. He had confined himself to the club for months after the defeat, so he could focus on exercising and therefore avenge himself. Although he challenged a strong martial disciple some time ago and got his iron clothes body badly beaten, it turned out to be lucky for him. His iron clothes body successfully reached the level of accomplishment because of a month's rest. Hence he was quite confident that he would fight to the last round of the tournament and stomp on Wang Tianhao's face. However, the side of his face that had been stomped on felt feverish again when he saw Wang Tianhao at Tianlu Club, lowering his confidence slightly. Thinking about this, Feng Jun finally sneered, "Are you sure that only the bastard with body of solid earth deserves due attention in this tournament? What about the other candidates from Fei Hong and Lu Feng Club? Senior Feng, please rest assured. We have asked around quite a few times, and the two clubs were originally much weaker than us. The only one you need to look out for is that body of solid earth guy, who our leader has mentioned as well. But even with the body, a bastard from a remote place can't possibly possess skills of a high level. Senior has the iron clothes body which is not inferior to the body of solid earth. Plus, you would exhaust that bastard to death with your skills in the 10th level of body tempering," said another Tianlu youngster, hurriedly offering his flattery. "As long as that's true, I could focus all my strength on dealing with Wang Tianhao," smiled Feng Jun murderously, stroking one side of his face. As he said this, his newly recovered ribs felt a slight trace of uneasiness. Just then, the door to the auxiliary room behind the practice ground was thrown open from one side. Amid bursts of laughter, Li Qinghai and some other senior men from the four clubs strolled out. They were all talking cheerfully and humorously with the others, as if it was a reunion with old friends. "Well, the competition among the four clubs officially begins now," decisively proclaimed the leader of Tianlu Club, Feng Langchan, after he had glanced at the contestants. Chapter 20, The Challenge. The practitioners from all the four clubs were thrilled to hear this. They stood around the ring as they waited for the signal. Li Qinghai and the other instructors approached the ring. Two strangers were among them, one of whom wielded a sword and armor, and carried a faint smile on his face. The other was an attractive woman who must have been in her 30s. Despite her beauty, she carried a cold aura around her. Both of them had been invited by the four clubs to judge the matches. The man was the field officer of the Feng City military, while the woman was a Hotian warrior as well as the leader of a powerful underground party. A moment later, Lang Fengchan was standing in the ring, announcing the rules of the competition. "The rules are the same as last time. The winning club will be announced after 3 rounds. In each round, a club will have one of its candidates issue a challenge to another club. The challenged club must then provide a candidate to take up the challenge. Candidates who have lost previously will not be allowed to proceed to the next round, while the winners will be able to participate in the next round. After 3 rounds, whichever club has the most candidates remaining will win the competition." Lang Fengchan jumped down from the ring as soon as he had finished explaining the rules. The military officer walked up to the ring in an unhurried manner. He greeted the crowd with clasped fists, and stood there without saying anything. Li Yunfeng's mouth twitched a little when he heard the rules. "Brother Li, do you have an opinion on the rules?" Shi Mu asked out of curiosity when he observed Li's reaction. "Brother Shi, this is the first time you are taking part in the competition. So it's natural for you to be unaware of the problem. This 3-round framework of the competition benefits the club which has the most powerful candidates. Last time, Wang Tianhao took up the challenge on behalf of the Jin Gang Club. He ended up winning all the 3 rounds by himself because none of the other candidates could resist his attack," Li Yunfeng said with a forced smile. "I was wondering why the rules seemed so simple. Thank you for explaining this to me." Shi Mu smiled knowingly at Li Yunfeng after a moment's thought, as he began to understand the true meaning behind the rules. Someone jumped into the ring just then, and began announcing his challenge in a loud voice, "I am Wu Ming from Tianlu Club. I'd like to see the techniques of the senior brothers from Lu Feng Club. Yun Feng, you go and accept his challenge. It shouldn't be a problem for you since you beat this fellow last year as well," the large red-faced young man ordered without turning his head. "Instructor Li, don't worry. I will beat this guy," Li Yunfeng answered his instructor as he stopped his conversation with Shi Mu. He stood up straight in a stance which exuded self-confidence, and suddenly put his hands behind his waist. When he took them out again, they were clad in blue gloves. They made a crisp tingling sound like a little bell on being shaken even slightly. Bronze pieces, the size of a thumb, were placed on the surface of the gloves. Li Yunfeng let out a fierce roar as he jumped into the ring. He drew 2 gleaming daggers and rushed straight at his opponent. The two met in the middle of the ring. Li Yunfeng's movements resembled that of a snake's, and he attacked his opponent with his fists from different angles. The young man named Wu Ming was using his 2 delicate-looking daggers to continuously jab at his opponent, making it hard for Li Yunfeng to reach him. From time to time their fists scraped against each other, producing sparks. The first round definitely turned out to be a good one. "No. Wu Ming's air-piercing dagger has been polished to a great extent. I'm afraid Yunfeng may be at a disadvantage," the red-faced man predicted after watching them for a while. His expression seemed to change slightly. "That's true. Wu Ming's technique was only at the initial stage last year. It is hard to comprehend how he has reached such a high level in a single year. Besides, Yunfeng's python bones fist is still short of perfection. It will be really hard to say if he can win this," Li Qinghai said, remarking on the uncertainty of Yunfeng's victory. As if to verify the remark, a sudden low shout came from the ring and the 2 figures in the ring suddenly separated. Wu Ming stumbled backward, with his hand pressed hard against his chest and his face dreadfully pale. On the opposite side, 2 glaring daggers were pierced halfway into Li Yunfeng's shoulders. It was obvious that he was unable to fight anymore. "Winner of the first round is Tianlu Club," the military officer stepped forward to announce the result from the ring. Li Yunfeng left the ring reluctantly, after throwing a fierce look at Wu Ming. The red-faced man approached Li Yunfeng and began examining the daggers that were sticking out of his shoulders. He then grasped them and quickly yanked them out in an instant. 2 sprays of blood spurted out into the air and went up as high as a foot, before the bleeding stopped abruptly. "Apply some medicine on the wounds and bind them up as soon as possible. You'll be all right in a few days," the red-faced man said with a somber face. Li Yunfeng was in great pain, and could only nod his thanks as he continued to sweat profusely. By then, the ring had been occupied by a spear-wielding young man of the Jin Gang Club, asking to challenge the Tianlu Club. The latter offered a candidate from its fold. The 2 men then fought with knives in their hands, and the sounds of the metal clashing could be heard all over the competition hall. After fighting for a while, the challenger from the Jin Gang Club lost his weapon. His opponent threw his knife and sent it flying, and the challenger had no option but to admit his defeat and retire. The 2 successive victories boosted the Tianlu Club's morale, and even Lang Fengchan seemed radiant and content as he stroked his mustache. A lot of small talk began to take place beneath the ring after the 2 fights. "What more can be said? I've heard that there is a guy here with the body of solid earth. Can you stop hiding and come out to face me?" Just then a figure leaped up from the crowd, with his spear pointing behind him. He stood steadily in the ring, looking in the direction of the Fei Hong Club. This arrogant young man was Wang Tianhao. "This stupid boy! I've told him 1,000 times to never blindly charge into a battle, but here he goes. He is challenging the Fei Hong guys in his first round," a sandy-haired old man said. He was bemoaning the fact that he had been unable to stop his nephew, and seemed close to throwing a fit. Meanwhile, the sudden challenge created a disturbance among the Fei Hong boys. Tai Dong, the thin dark boy, was stirring, and his eyes were ablaze with violence. He was about to walk up to the ring when he was stopped by a long-bearded man, who grasped his shoulders and shook his head. Dong Er, there is no need for you to go at such an early time. It will be a waste of your energy, which might make it hard for you to last till the final round. Gu Zhong, you go and test if Wang Tianhao's blazing spear techniques have improved much, the bearded man said. Gu Zhong's spirits dropped as he heard this, but he braced himself for the upcoming fight by drawing his sword and jumping into the ring. I'm asking for that bastard, not you, Wang Tianhao protested impatiently as he realized who was jumping into the ring. Please consider everything else after you have fought me, honorable young master, Gu Zhong said. Though he had always been afraid of Wang Tianhao, he was quite angered by his words. After emitting a low shout, he made his sword shake in his hand, causing a strong wind to swirl around it. This was the air-piercing sword he had been practicing for years. Humph, you're asking for trouble, Wang Tianhao said. His face grew sullen and he stuck his spear out bluntly. The tip of the spear began to vibrate rapidly, making it blur and then vanish entirely for an instant. A loud noise was heard as a ball of fire as big as a bowl appeared at the tip of Wang Tianhao's spear. It then transformed into a red light and rushed forward at an unstoppable speed. Boom! A deafening sound was heard as Gu Zhong was pushed down from the ring. He let out a shrill cry as his whole body was scorched from the force. The fireball continued to swirl for a while before dimming down. It turned out to be the tip of the spear, glaring with cold light. It was just surrounded by a ball of blazing fire which made it look rather mysterious. The flame of the blazing spear, the long-bearded man cried out, terrified at the sight. His feet moved involuntarily, and his figure immediately turned into a grey shadow. He then floated up into the air and caught the falling Gu Zhong in his arms. While the long-bearded man steadied himself on his feet, it became clear that the burnt body in his arms belonged to Gu Zhong, whose shirt had been burnt down to ashes. His bare skin was visible, covered entirely with white blisters. It was a gruesome scene. Brother Su, no one could have imagined that your nephew would have polished his blazing spear technique to such an extent. You've really caught us off guard, maybe you should consider warning us beforehand the next time. The long-bearded man turned around to question Uncle Su, confronting the older man in a stern voice, with Gu Zhong in his arms. You can't blame me this time, because I had no idea that he had reached such a level. To me this seems absolutely impossible. Only Hotian warriors can use that powerful technique, Uncle Su of the Jin Gang Club answered without thinking, looking amazed. I will not forget this, the long-bearded man said as he stomped away in anger. However, the only thing he could do was send Gu Zhong to a quiet medical room for treatment. Meanwhile, instructors of all the other clubs were casting terrified glances at Wang Tianhao, as if they were looking at a monster with sharp fangs. Their eyes seemed to say, "This is absolutely impossible. That's impossible. How can someone accomplish the flame of the blazing spear at the martial disciple level? Now we have no option left but defeat. No one at the martial disciple level can take that attack," Li Qinghai murmured to himself with a sullen face, obviously at his wit's end. Haha, now that Wang Tianhao has accomplished the flame of the blazing spear, it'll be easy for him to get enrolled into the Kaiyuan martial arts school. As far as I can tell, we will certainly win the championship. There is no need to fight anymore. Of course, anyone who is unconvinced can come up to challenge us. If Tianhao loses any challenge, we, the Jin Gang Club, will back down from this year's competition and gladly come in last, Uncle Su declared with utmost confidence after he jumped directly into the ring. He nodded at the officer, who was completely dumbstruck by this proclamation. Lang Fengchan and the other instructors of the three clubs stood gaping at each other in astonishment as they heard this. Then, Tai Dong's voice was heard. Humph! Winning without first fighting me? That's wishful thinking, he said as he stood up, ready to rush inside the ring. His words were dripping with confidence and anger, and managed to conceal his shock at Wang Tianhao's blazing spear. Stop it, Dong Er! I know your body of solid earth is excellent, but it will not be able to withstand even a single strike of the blazing spear." The long-bearded man held up a hand to stop him. His words made an immediate impact on Tai Dong's confidence. Though the young man had been wild and intractable, the long-bearded man held a lot of authority in his eyes. After all, he had been the one to bring Tai Dong to Feng City from his remote island. Meanwhile, a pale-faced Feng Jun clenched his fists tightly as he continued to stand on the other side of the ring. His nails were digging deep into his palms, but he didn't dare speak a word. "It's your turn, Shi Mu. Come. I have observed all of them and only you have the strength to fight me," Wang Tianhao said as his eyes found Shi Mu in the crowd, his indifference giving way to a mystifying smile.